I've owned my property for over a decade now, and it has always held a special place in my heart. Nestled in a quiet area surrounded by tall pines and the gentle sounds of nature, this land is not just a piece of real estate to me. It's a sanctuary. I remember the day I first laid eyes on it, a sprawling expanse of grass, wildflowers, and the promise of tranquility. After years of saving and searching, I finally took the plunge and bought it, eager to turn it into a home where I could create lasting memories. When I first moved in, the property was somewhat overgrown, a testament to its abandonment before I arrived. I spent countless weekends clearing brush, planting flowers, and imagining how I would build my life here. Over time, I transformed it into a space that reflected my personality, an oasis where friends and family gathered for summer barbecues and cozy winter evenings around the fire pit. Each corner of the yard bore witness to laughter and joy. To me, this land represented freedom, a place where I could escape from the chaos of everyday life. My connection to this property goes beyond mere ownership. It's intertwined with my identity. Every tree I planted represents a milestone in my life. The swing set in the backyard is where my niece learned how to play outside, while the vegetable garden became a symbol of self-sufficiency and nurturing. This land is not just mine. It's a living record of who I am and who I aspire to be. As the years passed, my bond with the property deepened. I became familiar with every inch of it. The way the sunlight filtered through the leaves at dawn, how the wildflowers bloomed each spring, and even the sounds of wildlife that filled the air at dusk. It was as if this land had become part of me, grounding me in ways that words could hardly express. When discussing property ownership, many people might think solely about legal titles or tax obligations. But for me, it was something far more personal. This land symbolizes stability in an ever-changing world. In times of uncertainty, returning home to my space provided comfort like nothing else could. The memories created here are priceless treasures that shape who I am. However, as much as I cherished my little piece of paradise, I never imagined that one day I would face an unexpected confrontation that would threaten everything I held dear. The day began like any other. I was enjoying an early morning coffee on my porch when a sheriff's vehicle pulled up at the end of my driveway. My heart sank as I watched him step out, wearing a stern expression that immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. At first glance, he looked official, dark uniform, badge glinting in the sunlight, but there was an unsettling air about him as he approached. My mind raced with questions. Why was he here? Did something happen? Was there an issue with my property? As he reached my porch steps, his words sent shockwaves through me. I'm here to inform you that you're trespassing on private property. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. Trespassing? On my own land. Confusion clouded my thoughts as I struggled to process what was happening. Excuse me, I replied incredulously. This is my property. The sheriff's demeanor didn't change. He seemed convinced that he was delivering some sort of justice in this bizarre situation. In that moment, all those years of hard work and dedication felt like they were crumbling around me. How could someone not know that I owned this place? It was almost unfathomable, a nightmare unfolding before my eyes. My mind raced back to the paperwork, the deed proving ownership filed away safely in my home office. And yet here stood an officer questioning my rights to what had always been mine. As we exchanged words filled with frustration and disbelief, it became painfully clear that this wasn't going to be easily resolved. The sheriff insisted he had received reports of suspicious activity on what he believed was someone else's property, another twist in this already convoluted tale. Despite my protests and attempts to clarify the situation with factual evidence detailing my ownership rights, he remained unmoved. The feeling of helplessness washed over me as I realized how quickly things could escalate when misunderstandings arose between citizens and law enforcement officials. My sanctuary, my home, was suddenly perceived as a potential crime scene simply because someone had made an incorrect assumption. Through all this turmoil, one thought kept echoing in my mind. How could anyone not know that this land belongs to me? As anger bubbled beneath the surface and anxiety gnawed at me from within, I knew then that this confrontation was about much more than just legalities. It spoke volumes about communication failures between residents and authorities. In retrospect, facing down that sheriff turned out to be a pivotal moment, not only for me personally, but also for understanding broader implications regarding property rights and community relationships. Little did I know then that this encounter would lead to deeper discussions about ownership, accountability, and ultimately advocating for clearer communication within our community. As we moved forward from this bewildering confrontation with the sheriff's office seeking resolution amidst confusion over trespassing accusations on what should have been unequivocally recognized as mine, my own land, I couldn't help but reflect on how important it is for everyone to have clarity regarding their rights as property owners while emphasizing mutual respect between individuals and law enforcement agencies alike. The day began like any other, with the sun peeking through the trees and casting a warm glow over my property. I had just settled into my morning routine, sipping coffee on the porch and enjoying the peaceful sounds of nature surrounding me. Little did I know that tranquility would soon be shattered. It was around mid-morning when I noticed an unfamiliar vehicle turning down my long driveway. As it got closer, I recognized it as a sheriff's car, a dark cruiser with the official insignia emblazoned on the side. My heart began to race, sensing that something wasn't right. As the car came to a halt, I set my coffee down and stepped off the porch, trying to gauge what was happening. The sheriff emerged from his vehicle, and immediately I could see he wore a serious expression. He looked around my yard with a furrowed brow, as if surveying the scene for something amiss. There was an unsettling air about him as he approached, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was about to take a turn for the worse. "Are you the owner of this property?" he asked, his tone clipped and authoritative. I nodded, taken aback by his question. "Yes, I am," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. The sheriff then introduced himself and stated he had received a report about someone trespassing on private property. Confused, I looked around at my surroundings. This was my land, after all. "Sir," he continued, "we've had complaints about suspicious activity here." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Suspicious activity? On my own property? My mind raced with thoughts of what could have prompted such a claim. Had someone seen me working in my garden or walking around? Was there something in my behavior that seemed out of place? "I can assure you there's nothing suspicious going on here," I said firmly. "I live here. This is my home." But rather than acknowledging my ownership, he glanced back toward his cruiser as if searching for validation of his suspicions. "Do you have proof of ownership?" he asked bluntly. My heart sank further. Of course, I had documentation, deeds, tax records. But why should I need to prove myself on my own land? It felt absurd to even consider. As we stood there amidst the flowers blooming in my carefully tended garden, I felt a mix of disbelief and frustration bubbling within me. "I have paperwork inside," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can show you that this is indeed my property." The sheriff didn't respond immediately, but instead took a step back, crossing his arms as if weighing his next move. "I'll need to see that documentation," he insisted, his voice now taking on a more commanding tone. It felt like an ultimatum rather than an invitation for dialogue. With reluctance gnawing at me, I gestured for him to follow me inside the house. Every step felt heavy as we walked up to the front door. The reality of this situation was surreal. I was inviting a law enforcement officer into my home because he thought I might be trespassing on land that belonged to me. Once inside, I quickly retrieved the deed from its spot in a filing cabinet, along with other relevant papers proving ownership. As I handed them over, anxiety bubbled up inside me. It was hard to believe it had come to this point. The sheriff examined the documents thoroughly, flipping through pages and scrutinizing every detail. He muttered under his breath while scribbling notes in his notepad. The silence stretched out uncomfortably between us as I watched him work through his mental checklist of protocol while grappling with this puzzling situation. After what felt like an eternity of waiting, though it was likely only minutes, the sheriff finally looked up from the papers with an expression that revealed confusion rather than resolution. "According to these documents," he stated slowly, "you are indeed listed as the owner." I felt a rush of relief mixed with lingering frustration at how we had arrived at this point in the first place. "Exactly. This is my home," I said emphatically. Yet rather than acknowledging this fact and moving forward, he paused again before replying with an unexpected declaration. "Even so, there's been an ongoing investigation regarding reports of trespassing in this area." His tone shifted slightly. It seemed he was caught between following procedure and recognizing that he might have been misled. I struggled to wrap my head around what he meant by ongoing investigation. Was this merely a case of mistaken identity? Had someone misreported their concerns out of spite or misunderstandings? The implications were staggering. How could anyone mistake me for someone trespassing? Feeling a mix of indignation and urgency to clear things up once and for all, I urged him to reconsider his approach. This wasn't just any piece of land. It was mine. Throughout our conversation, emotions surged within me. Anger at being questioned about my rightful place and concern over how easily misunderstandings like these could spiral out of control. Look, I said firmly but calmly. I understand you're doing your job, but there has been no wrongdoing here. Each word felt like it carried weight as we stood facing each other amid shadows cast by uncertainty and confusion. Finally relenting somewhat in demeanor but still adhering strictly to protocol, he suggested calling in additional resources, perhaps even contacting dispatch for further verification regarding reports made against me since they had already escalated matters thus far. As we navigated through this bewildering encounter, a dance between authority and ownership, I couldn't help but wonder how often people found themselves caught between their rights and misconceptions fueled by fear or misinformation. It struck me then that beyond any legal boundaries lay deeper lessons about communication within our communities, lessons yet untold in our shared narratives about homeownership and belonging amidst uncertainty. Ultimately, this encounter served as just one chapter in an unfolding story, not merely mine, but one reflecting broader challenges many face when navigating complex intersections between personal liberties and societal assumptions about property rights today. As I stood there, grappling with the incredulity of the situation, I realized that the sheriff's perspective was shaped by more than just a misunderstanding. It was influenced by a series of events and reports that had led him to my property that day. His demeanor suggested he believed he was acting in the best interest of public safety, but the implications of his actions were profound and unsettling. Looking back, I could see how the sheriff had arrived at his conclusion. The community surrounding my property had been experiencing a spate of incidents, vandalism, theft, and even reports of suspicious individuals lurking around various plots of land. These occurrences had put the local law enforcement on high alert, leading to increased scrutiny of anyone who might seem out of place. In this environment of heightened vigilance, even normal activities could easily be misconstrued. The sheriff explained that he had received multiple calls from concerned neighbors regarding unusual behavior in the area. They described sightings of an individual working late into the night, using equipment that looked unfamiliar to them. I could only assume that my late-night gardening sessions, or perhaps my use of power tools for home improvement projects, had raised eyebrows. To those who didn't know me or my routines, my presence might have seemed suspect. "People are on edge around here," he stated bluntly, as if seeking to justify his actions without realizing how it affected me personally. When we get reports about someone they don't recognize on their property or near it, we have to respond. His explanation made sense in a broader context. However, it felt deeply frustrating when applied to my situation. I was not a stranger. I was the owner trying to cultivate my home. He continued to elaborate on some specific claims made by neighbors. One individual had mentioned seeing someone with a flashlight wandering around at odd hours, leading them to think that something illicit might be happening. Another neighbor reported hearing loud noises associated with machinery late at night and assumed it must be trespassers up to no good. It became painfully clear that these misinterpretations stemmed from fear rather than factual evidence. "From our perspective," he added, "we can't just dismiss these reports. We have to investigate every call we receive." I understood the necessity for caution in law enforcement. Still, it felt like an insurmountable wall between us, one built on assumptions rather than knowledge. This wall not only impacted me as a property owner, but also represented a larger issue within our community, the fragility of trust. The sheriff's perspective was rooted in a commitment to protect and serve. However, it also highlighted the potential for misunderstandings when communication breaks down between residents and law enforcement. The officers are trained to react quickly to any perceived threat, but in doing so, they sometimes overlook the nuances of individual situations. As I listened to him describe these reports and concerns from neighbors, a mix of emotions washed over me. anger at being labeled suspicious, and empathy for those living in fear amidst rising crime rates. It was easy to sympathize with their desire for safety, but difficult to accept that their fears could lead to such drastic conclusions about someone they didn't know. I thought about how quickly this scenario could spiral out of control if left unchecked. A single complaint could lead to more investigations, more confrontations, each time further eroding the foundation of trust that should exist within a community. The sheriff's insistence on protocol felt necessary from his standpoint, yet daunting from mine, as someone who simply wanted to live peacefully in my home. At one point during our conversation, he mentioned that community meetings had been held where residents shared their concerns openly. Discussions centered around neighborhood watch programs and increasing patrols in response to rising crime. I couldn't help but wonder if anyone had voiced their apprehensions about misidentification or wrongful accusations during those meetings. Did others share my experience? Were they aware of how easily fear could cloud judgment? As we continued talking about the reports and how they shaped his response that day, I began to see how important it was for both sides, the residents and law enforcement, to engage in constructive dialogue moving forward. There needed to be an understanding that while vigilance is essential for community safety, it should never come at the expense of individual rights or dignity. The sheriff finally softened slightly when he recognized my frustration wasn't directed solely at him, but rather at the broader implications of what his visit represented, a failure in communication between neighbors and law enforcement that had culminated in this surreal confrontation on my own land. "Look," he said after a long pause, "I'm not here to vilify you or make your life harder." His tone shifted slightly, as if he was beginning to grasp how deeply personal this situation became for me amidst all the procedural rationale. "I just need you to understand where these calls are coming from. And therein lay part of the problem." While I could appreciate his position as an officer tasked with maintaining order amid chaos, it was challenging not to feel like collateral damage caught between conflicting narratives, the narrative of safety driven by fears versus one advocating for rightful ownership and autonomy. As we wrapped up our conversation inside my home, a space filled with memories and tranquility, I couldn't shake off the feeling that this incident would resonate beyond just one encounter with law enforcement. It underscored vital lessons about understanding each other's perspectives, while also highlighting areas where improvements could be made within our communities regarding how we communicate concerns without compromising others' rights. In retrospect, this experience revealed not only the complexities tied up in property ownership, but also underscored larger societal conversations surrounding accountability, how we define safety in our neighborhoods while ensuring respect for those who call them home. What began as a misunderstanding spiraled into an opportunity for growth, both for myself and potentially for others navigating similar paths ahead, as we all sought clarity amidst uncertainty together within our shared spaces. As the sheriff stood in my living room, I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me. The tension was palpable as I tried to navigate this surreal encounter, caught between the need to prove my ownership and the frustration of having to justify my very presence on my own land. I knew I had the necessary documentation to assert my rights, but retrieving them felt like an exercise in frustration, especially given the circumstances. "Let me show you what I have," I finally said, gesturing toward a small office space adjacent to the living room where I kept important papers organized. The sheriff nodded, his expression softening slightly as he followed me into the room. It was a modest setup, nothing flashy, but it contained everything I needed to establish that this land was undeniably mine. I rummaged through the filing cabinet, pulling out various documents that chronicled my ownership over the years. First, I retrieved the property deed, a legal document that clearly stated my name as the owner of the land. Holding it up for him to see, I pointed out the official seals and signatures that validated its authenticity. "This is my deed," I said firmly, hoping to convey both confidence and clarity. The sheriff took the document from my hands and began examining it closely. He scanned through the details, my name, the legal description of the property, and all necessary signatures confirming the transaction. "I see this is filed with the county clerk's office," he acknowledged, glancing back at me with a hint of surprise. It was a small victory amidst our tense exchange. At least he recognized that I wasn't fabricating any information. Next, I pulled out tax records associated with the property. These documents demonstrated not only that I had been paying taxes on this land, but also that it had been in my possession for years without dispute. Each record painted a picture of continuity, proof that this was not just a fleeting ownership, but rather a commitment to maintaining and improving what was rightfully mine. I've been paying property taxes annually, I explained as I handed him those records. These bills clearly indicate my ownership. As he flipped through them, his brow furrowed slightly in concentration. It felt like a pivotal moment. Here was evidence that provided clarity amidst confusion. Yet, even as I laid out these documents before him, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of disbelief that we had arrived at this point in our conversation. Why should anyone, let alone a sheriff, need such confirmation in their own backyard? But I understood that for him, these steps were necessary given the reports he had received from neighbors who were unaware of my identity or intentions. As he continued reviewing each paper with meticulous care, I reflected on how important it is for property owners to keep their documentation organized and accessible. This experience emphasized how vital it is to have tangible proof ready at hand, not just for situations like this one, but also for future interactions regarding ownership rights. After what felt like an eternity of silence filled only by the rustling of papers, he looked back up at me with an expression that seemed mixed between acknowledgement and contemplation. Everything here looks legitimate, he admitted cautiously. But you have to understand, I'm still bound by protocol. His words hung in the air between us, a reminder that even when confronted with clear evidence of ownership, procedures must be followed. Although part of me wanted him to simply accept my word and back down immediately, I understood that his role required adherence to policies designed to protect both citizens and law enforcement alike. The sheriff then began scribbling notes again, while referencing specific points from each document before relaying them back into his notebook for future reference. This process struck me as a strange dance, one where trust was established only through documentation rather than personal conviction. While he continued with his notes, I couldn't help but feel grateful for having kept everything organized over the years, a practice often neglected by many homeowners who might not anticipate needing such proof during unexpected confrontations. It served as a reminder of why maintaining proper records is essential. They provide reassurance not just for oneself, but also facilitate smoother interactions when misunderstandings arise. Once he finished documenting relevant details about my deed and tax records, we returned to discussing next steps. Given what you've shown me, he said cautiously, I think we can resolve this without further escalation. My heart leaped at those words. Relief washed over me as hope flickered back into view. However, his mention of protocol still lingered like a shadow overhead, a reminder that while ownership might be proven on paper, restoring peace would require more than just documentation. It necessitated dialogue and understanding between us if we were ever going to move forward together without lingering suspicion or resentment hanging in the air. In moments like these, where legalities intertwine with personal narratives, the importance of communication cannot be overstated. A simple misunderstanding spiraled into an encounter fraught with tension. Yet, through patience and transparency regarding ownership rights, we stood on the brink of finding common ground amid confusion. Looking back at our exchange now serves as an important lesson. In any relationship, whether between neighbors or individuals within communities, it's crucial to foster open lines of communication while reinforcing trust built upon shared understanding rather than assumptions fueled by fear or misinformation. As we concluded our discussion about confirming ownership amidst ongoing investigations surrounding my property rights, one thing became clear. Navigating these complexities involved more than presenting documents. It demanded compassion alongside assertiveness, while seeking resolution within chaotic circumstances brought forth by misunderstandings forged through fear rather than familiarity. Ultimately, this experience illuminated not just pathways toward clarity around property ownership, but also deeper conversations about accountability within communities themselves, creating spaces where individuals could feel safe sharing concerns without risking wrongful accusations or assumptions leading down paths riddled with unnecessary conflict, moving forward together towards reconciliation instead through shared understanding amongst neighbors everywhere, striving toward harmony amongst diverse backgrounds shaped around homeownership intertwined deeply within our identities. As the tension of my encounter with the sheriff began to settle, I found myself reflecting on the complex web of local laws surrounding property rights and trespassing. It was clear that these regulations played a significant role in the misunderstanding that led to my attempted arrest. Understanding how these laws functioned and the nuances within them was crucial not only for me, but for anyone navigating similar situations in our community. At the heart of the matter were definitions of property rights and what constitutes trespassing. In many jurisdictions, property ownership grants individuals certain rights, including the ability to control access to their land. However, these rights can be complicated by local ordinances and state laws that dictate how property lines are defined and what constitutes a legal presence on that land. In my case, I had always believed that ownership meant unequivocal authority over my space. But local laws often include various caveats, such as easements or shared access rights, that can blur the lines of ownership. For instance, if a neighbor has a right-of-way across my property, it could complicate matters if they or someone else mistakenly assumed they had permission to enter without my consent. Moreover, the law often recognizes certain exceptions based on perceived safety concerns. In areas where crime rates have escalated, local authorities may adopt stricter interpretations of what constitutes suspicious behavior. This can lead to quicker assumptions about trespassing when an individual is seen working late into the night or using equipment that might appear out of place. Such interpretations can shift based on community sentiment, making it essential for residents to stay informed about local regulations and any changes that might affect their rights. The sheriff's insistence on protocol during our encounter stemmed from this very framework of local laws. He was tasked with responding to reports of suspicious activity without fully understanding the context behind those reports, something that often leads to misunderstandings like mine. The fear surrounding potential criminal activity had created a climate in which vigilance sometimes outweighed common sense, prompting officers to act quickly based on incomplete information. Additionally, I learned that ignorance of property lines can further complicate matters. Many people in the community may not be familiar with their neighbors' boundaries or ownership statuses, leading them to make hasty conclusions about someone they don't recognize or understand. This lack of awareness can catalyze unnecessary confrontations, as individuals may feel entitled to report what they perceive as suspicious behavior without knowing all the facts. In my case, I was left grappling with how easily misunderstandings could arise from assumptions fueled by fear rather than facts. The reports made against me were rooted in genuine concern from neighbors who felt uneasy about what they didn't know. And while those feelings were valid, they were also misguided when applied to someone who had every right to be where I was. Local laws vary widely from one place to another, and understanding these differences is crucial for both residents and law enforcement alike. In some regions, for example, stand your ground, laws exist that empower property owners to defend their right to their land aggressively. In others, however, trespassing laws may lean more toward protecting the interests of those entering private property under specific circumstances, like emergency situations or perceived threats. As I delved deeper into this topic following my encounter with the sheriff, I realized how important it was for individuals within a community to engage in conversations about these laws openly. Town hall meetings or neighborhood gatherings could serve as venues to discuss property rights and clarify misconceptions regarding ownership and access. By fostering dialogue around these issues, we could bridge gaps in understanding and avoid misinterpretations that lead to conflicts. Furthermore, education plays an essential role in this equation. Local governments could benefit from offering workshops or informational sessions aimed at helping residents understand their property rights better. By demystifying legal jargon and presenting clear examples of common scenarios, such as easements versus boundaries, communities could empower individuals with knowledge necessary for navigating potential disputes in a constructive manner. Ultimately, it became evident that addressing misunderstandings around local laws requires collective effort from both citizens and law enforcement agencies alike. Building relationships founded on trust and open communication would go a long way toward preventing situations like mine from occurring again, where fear-driven assumptions prompt confrontations instead of collaboration. In reflecting on my experience with the sheriff, especially regarding how local laws influenced his actions, I came away with renewed resolve. advocacy for clearer communication surrounding property rights should become a priority within our neighborhoods moving forward. By emphasizing cooperation between residents and law enforcement while ensuring everyone understands their rights under applicable laws, will foster safer environments where individuals are not only protected but also respected as vital contributors within their communities. This encounter opened up an avenue for exploration into broader discussions about accountability, not just within legal frameworks, but also in cultivating compassion amid complexity inherent in property ownership versus societal perceptions thereof. Recognizing each other's perspectives alongside legal stipulations would allow us all greater agency over our narratives while reinforcing mutual respect across boundaries drawn by fences, yet united through shared aspirations for understanding and harmony, as neighbors seeking connection amidst our diverse backgrounds woven together through homeownership intertwined deeply within our identities. Thus emerged an opportunity not merely rooted in personal adversity, but one advocating change. A chance for communities everywhere grappling with similar tensions surrounding property rights today, learning how best navigate complexities ahead through ongoing dialogue inspired by personal experiences rooted deeply within this journey toward clarity amidst uncertainty, creating spaces where everyone feels safe belonging home regardless barriers faced, a long path taken together, moving forward united towards reconciliation, embracing diversity, shaped around ownership, intertwined closely within who we are as neighbors, striving toward harmony, fostering environments built respect, nurtured through love, connection woven throughout fabric, community built upon understanding, compassion, driving us all forward hand in hand together toward brighter futures ahead, yet unfolding before us all as we continue this shared journey together onward. In the aftermath of my encounter with the sheriff, I found myself reflecting not only on my own experience, but also on the broader implications it had for my community. The incident sparked conversations among neighbors and community members that revealed a complex web of emotions, perceptions, and concerns surrounding property rights and law enforcement. As news of the situation spread, I was surprised by the variety of reactions. Some neighbors expressed sympathy, understanding that I was simply trying to enjoy my home and maintain my property. They shared their own experiences of feeling misunderstood or misjudged by others in the community, emphasizing how quickly assumptions could be made based on appearances or behaviors. It's easy to forget that we're all just trying to live our lives, one neighbor remarked over coffee. But when you don't know someone, it's easy to jump to conclusions. Others, however, viewed the incident through a different lens. They expressed concern about the rising crime rates in our area and praised the sheriff's department for being vigilant in responding to reports of suspicious activity. I appreciate that they're taking these matters seriously, one longtime resident stated during a neighborhood gathering. We've had break-ins before, and it's important for law enforcement to be aware of what's happening. This sentiment highlighted a division within the community, between those who valued proactive policing and those who felt that such vigilance could lead to unnecessary confrontations. The incident also ignited discussions about trust between residents and law enforcement. Many neighbors began to share their thoughts on how well they knew the sheriff's department and whether they felt comfortable approaching officers with concerns. Some expressed gratitude for having officers who took their safety seriously, while others voiced frustration at feeling like their privacy was being invaded by overzealous policing. As I participated in these discussions, I realized that this incident was not just about me. It was emblematic of larger issues related to property rights and community dynamics. Many residents felt uncertain about their rights as property owners and how those rights aligned with law enforcement practices. The fear of being misjudged or accused hung heavily in the air, creating an atmosphere of unease. One particularly poignant moment arose during a community meeting convened in response to my experience. Residents gathered to discuss both safety concerns and strategies for fostering better relationships with local law enforcement. I shared my story, emphasizing the importance of communication and understanding both sides of an issue. As I spoke, I could see nods of recognition from neighbors who understood how easily misunderstandings could spiral out of control. During this meeting, a few residents took the opportunity to voice their frustrations about past experiences with law enforcement as well. One woman recounted a time when her son was questioned while playing in their yard simply because someone thought he looked suspicious. Her story resonated with many attendees who shared similar feelings of vulnerability when it came to interactions with police. These shared experiences underscored a vital point. While law enforcement plays an essential role in maintaining safety, there is also a responsibility to ensure that citizens feel respected and understood within their own communities. It became clear that fostering a sense of unity required more than mere vigilance. It necessitated open dialogue where residents felt heard and valued. As more people contributed to the conversation that night, discussions began turning toward potential solutions. Ideas ranged from organizing neighborhood watch programs where residents could collaborate with law enforcement to create safer environments, to hosting regular community forums aimed at addressing property rights issues directly. Many believe that through education and awareness initiatives, misunderstandings could be minimized. Throughout these conversations, I couldn't help but feel hopeful about the potential for positive change within our community. My encounter with the sheriff had opened up avenues for dialogue that may not have occurred otherwise, a chance for neighbors to reflect on their relationships with one another as well as with local authorities. However, it was essential to acknowledge that not everyone would come away from this incident with a sense of resolution or trust. Some individuals remained skeptical about law enforcement practices and questioned whether real change was possible without significant shifts in attitudes among both officers and residents alike. The varying reactions among neighbors also highlighted another layer of complexity: how personal experiences shape perspectives on authority figures within local communities. For some, police officers represented safety and order. For others, they symbolized intrusion and misunderstanding, a reflection of broader societal tensions playing out on an intimate scale. As I continued engaging with my neighbors following this incident, whether through casual chats at local coffee shops or more formal gatherings, I realized that these conversations were critical in building lasting connections rooted in empathy rather than fear. By sharing our stories openly and honestly, we could cultivate understanding among ourselves while also holding our local authorities accountable in ways that encouraged mutual respect moving forward. Ultimately, this experience served as an important reminder. Communities thrive when they prioritize open communication and collective problem-solving, where every voice matters regardless of background or perspective on issues impacting our lives together every day around us. Within shared spaces we inhabit side by side, striving toward harmony amidst diversity, shaping who we are collectively intertwined through homeownership, deeply connected across boundaries drawn by fences, yet united through aspirations for understanding, compassion, driving us all forward hand in hand together toward brighter futures ahead, yet unfolding before us all. While my encounter with the sheriff may have been unsettling at first glance, an unexpected confrontation rooted in misunderstanding, it sparked a critical conversation within my community that encouraged growth, healing, and ultimately fostered stronger relationships built upon trust forged through shared experiences navigating complexities inherent in property ownership intertwined closely within our identities, shaping who we are as neighbors striving toward harmony. The emotional toll from my encounter with the sheriff lingered long after the situation had been resolved. Initially, I felt a rush of confusion as I struggled to comprehend how someone could mistake me for a trespasser on my own land. That confusion quickly morphed into frustration, which bubbled beneath the surface like a dormant volcano ready to erupt. How could an officer of the law confront me in such a manner, questioning my right to be present on property I had worked tirelessly to call home? In those moments, standing there with the sheriff, I felt an overwhelming sense of violation. My home, my sanctuary, had suddenly become a battleground where my identity and ownership were under scrutiny. The feelings of safety and comfort that usually enveloped me when I stepped onto my property vanished in an instant. Instead, I was thrust into a world where I had to defend my existence against assumptions and accusations. As the sheriff detailed the reports that had prompted his visit, I couldn't help but feel a wave of indignation wash over me. Each claim he relayed felt like another strike against my character, another reminder that someone had perceived me as suspicious simply because they didn't recognize me or my activities. It was disheartening to realize that despite the years I had spent cultivating relationships within the community, one misinformed report could overshadow everything I had built. The frustration continued to simmer as our conversation unfolded. I wanted to shout, to demand that he see me for who I truly was, a homeowner dedicated to maintaining my property and enjoying the peace it brought me. Instead, I found myself grappling with feelings of helplessness as he insisted on following protocol. It was as if my voice and my rights were being drowned out by bureaucracy and assumptions. This emotional turmoil extended beyond that single encounter. It seeped into every corner of my life. In the days that followed, I found myself replaying the incident over and over in my mind, questioning how things could have escalated so quickly. The laughter and joy that once filled my home were replaced with anxiety and uncertainty. I began to second-guess every interaction I had with neighbors, wondering if they were judging me or harboring suspicions based on their own misunderstandings. Even simple tasks like tending to my garden or taking a stroll around my property became fraught with tension. Each time I stepped outside, a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach as I worried about being misinterpreted again. The fear of law enforcement returning loomed over me like a dark cloud, an ever-present reminder that one moment could change everything. Moreover, the experience took a toll on my mental well-being. I had always prided myself on being confident and self-assured, but now those qualities felt distant. The incident chipped away at my sense of security not only in my home, but also in myself. My mind raced with thoughts of what might happen if someone else reported me again, or if law enforcement misunderstood another innocent action. As time passed, I began to consider the broader implications of this emotional impact, not just for myself, but for others who might find themselves in similar situations. How many individuals experienced this same violation of trust? How often did people feel trapped in their own homes due to misunderstandings perpetuated by fear? It became evident to me that this incident was part of a larger conversation about how we perceive each other within our communities. In sharing these reflections with friends and family, many expressed their own stories of feeling judged or misunderstood by law enforcement or neighbors alike. It opened up conversations about vulnerability and fear, a shared human experience regardless of background or circumstances. This realization served as both comfort and heartache. We weren't alone in navigating these emotions, yet also recognized how pervasive such feelings could be among residents seeking safety and belonging. Amidst this emotional journey, however, there emerged an opportunity for growth. While it was essential to acknowledge the pain caused by such encounters, it also sparked discussions about advocacy for better communication between law enforcement and community members. As neighbors shared their stories during coffee chats or neighborhood gatherings, it became clear that fostering understanding was vital in creating safer environments for everyone involved. Reflecting on the emotional toll of this incident has taught me valuable lessons about resilience and empathy. Rather than allowing anger to consume me, I sought ways to channel that energy into constructive conversations, advocating for clearer lines of communication within our community while emphasizing compassion toward one another's experiences. In essence, while this encounter with law enforcement left lasting scars on my emotional landscape, it also ignited a desire for change, a push toward building bridges instead of walls among neighbors navigating complexities surrounding property rights amid fears rooted deeply within society itself. The journey ahead may be fraught with challenges as we strive for understanding amidst misunderstandings. Yet through open dialogue combined with shared vulnerability lies an opportunity for healing not just individually, but collectively fostering spaces where everyone feels safe belonging home, regardless barriers faced along paths taken together, moving forward united toward reconciliation, embracing diversity, shaped around ownership intertwined closely within our identities, shaping who we are. As neighbors striving toward harmony. Ultimately, it is crucial to remember that every experience, however painful, can become a catalyst for transformation if approached with intention and empathy, driving us all forward hand in hand together toward brighter futures ahead, yet unfolding before us all. In acknowledging the emotional toll, while seeking solutions grounded in compassion allows us all greater agency over narratives defining who we are as individuals, while fostering understanding across differences, building stronger communities rooted firmly upon respect, nurtured through love, connection woven throughout fabric, community built upon understanding, compassion, driving us all forward. Reflecting on the tumultuous experience with the sheriff, I realized that there were several key lessons to be learned from this incident. Insights that not only pertained to my personal situation, but also resonated with broader themes of property rights, community dynamics, and communication with law enforcement. First and foremost, I learned the paramount importance of knowing one's rights as a property owner. Understanding the legal framework surrounding property ownership is crucial. It empowers individuals to assert their rights confidently and ensures they are prepared to defend their space against any misunderstandings. I had always taken pride in my home ownership, but I hadn't fully grasped the intricacies of property rights until I found myself in this predicament. The experience highlighted that being informed about local laws, such as trespassing regulations, easements, and boundaries, can make a significant difference in how one navigates challenges related to ownership. Moreover, this incident underscored the necessity of clear communication with law enforcement. It became evident that misunderstandings often arise when information is lacking or misinterpreted. Establishing dialogue between residents and police can help bridge gaps in understanding. Law enforcement must be receptive to hearing from community members. Likewise, residents should feel comfortable approaching officers with concerns or questions. By fostering an environment where open communication flourishes, we can reduce the likelihood of assumptions leading to confrontations that could escalate unnecessarily. The importance of community awareness regarding property issues cannot be overstated either. As neighbors shared their own experiences following my encounter, it became clear that many residents felt uncertain about their rights and responsibilities. This lack of awareness can lead to misinterpretations and conflicts that could easily be avoided. I began to see the potential for creating more informed communities through educational outreach, such as workshops or community forums focused on property rights and local laws. By empowering residents with knowledge about their rights and responsibilities, we can cultivate a culture of mutual respect and understanding. Additionally, this experience highlighted the significance of empathy and understanding within our neighborhoods. When people act out of fear or misunderstanding, it's essential to approach those situations with compassion rather than anger. Recognizing that everyone has unique perspectives shaped by their experiences can lead to more meaningful conversations and resolutions. The incident revealed how easily neighbors could misinterpret behaviors based on preconceived notions. Thus, fostering an atmosphere of openness and trust can help mitigate those misunderstandings before they escalate. I also learned about the power of community engagement in addressing issues related to law enforcement practices. The discussions sparked by my encounter led to greater interest in advocating for better relationships between residents and police officers. Many neighbors expressed a desire for regular meetings or forums where they could voice concerns directly to local authorities, while also hearing about policing strategies and initiatives aimed at enhancing safety without infringing upon individual rights. Furthermore, it was evident that this situation served as an opportunity for growth, not just for me personally, but for our entire community as well. By sharing experiences openly without fear of judgment or backlash, we could create a support network that encourages collaboration between residents and law enforcement alike. This collective approach could foster a sense of belonging among neighbors while also reinforcing accountability within our local police force. Finally, perhaps the most profound lesson I took away from this experience was resilience in the face of adversity. While confrontations like mine can leave lasting scars emotionally, they also present opportunities for change and growth if approached thoughtfully. Rather than allowing fear or anger to dictate responses moving forward, I resolved to channel those emotions into advocacy efforts aimed at promoting clearer communication about property rights within our community. In summary, the key takeaways from this entire experience revolve around empowerment through knowledge, knowing one's rights as a property owner, engaging in clear communication with law enforcement while fostering relationships built on trust, and advocating for community awareness surrounding property issues. These lessons not only serve as guideposts for navigating future challenges, but also contribute toward building stronger communities grounded in empathy and understanding. As I reflect on the journey from confrontation to resolution, a path paved with emotional turmoil, yet ultimately leading toward clarity, I am reminded that every experience offers valuable insights worth sharing with others navigating similar complexities within their lives together collectively, striving toward harmony amidst diversity, shaping who we are collectively intertwined through homeownership, deeply connected across boundaries drawn by fences, yet united through shared aspirations for understanding, compassion, driving us all forward hand in hand together toward brighter futures ahead, yet unfolding before us all. Understanding these lessons is crucial as we move forward, not only for ourselves, but for generations to come who will inherit spaces filled with both challenges and opportunities along paths taken together, navigating complexities inherent in property ownership intertwined closely within our identities, shaping who we are as neighbors, striving toward equitable coexistence built upon respect, nurtured through love, connection woven throughout fabric, community built upon understanding, compassion, driving us all forward. As I reflect on the series of events that led to my encounter with the sheriff, it becomes clear that this experience was not merely a personal ordeal, but a catalyst for broader conversations about property rights, community dynamics, and the importance of clear communication. It is a reminder that misunderstandings can arise anywhere, particularly in situations involving law enforcement and neighbors who may not know one another well. This incident illuminated the urgent need for clearer education around property rights. Many individuals in our communities may not fully understand the intricacies of ownership, local laws, and their rights as homeowners. This lack of knowledge can lead to misinterpretations and unnecessary confrontations, as I experienced firsthand. It is vital for all residents to be informed about their legal standing, including what constitutes trespassing, easements, and local ordinances that may affect their rights. I urge everyone to advocate for property rights education within their communities. This can take many forms: community workshops led by legal experts, informational pamphlets distributed through neighborhood associations, or even online resources tailored to local laws and regulations. By empowering residents with knowledge about their rights and responsibilities, we can create a more informed populace ready to address potential conflicts with confidence and clarity. Moreover, engaging with local representatives is crucial in fostering systemic change. As community members, we have the power to influence policy and advocate for reforms that promote better understanding between residents and law enforcement officers. I encourage you to reach out to your local officials, attend town hall meetings, participate in public forums, or schedule one-on-one discussions to share your thoughts on property rights issues. Expressing concerns about misunderstandings or conflicts arising from miscommunication helps ensure that these topics remain at the forefront of community discussions. In advocating for reforms, consider proposing initiatives that facilitate better communication between law enforcement and residents. This could include regular community policing meetings where officers can interact with community members in a non-threatening environment, or educational outreach programs designed to demystify police procedures while ensuring transparency regarding how reports are handled. Such initiatives foster trust within the community and empower residents to feel more comfortable voicing concerns without fear of being misunderstood or judged. Another important aspect of this call to action is fostering empathy within our communities. Encouraging open dialogue among neighbors can help break down barriers created by fear or misunderstanding. Community-building activities, such as potlucks, cleanup days, or block parties, can serve as platforms for people to connect personally rather than solely through the lens of property ownership or law enforcement encounters. When individuals get to know one another beyond superficial interactions, it becomes easier to build trust and understanding. As we move forward from this experience, let us not forget the emotional impact that misunderstandings can have on individuals' lives. Many people have faced similar situations where they felt vulnerable or unfairly judged based solely on appearances or assumptions. Together, we must work toward creating environments where everyone feels safe and respected within their homes and neighborhoods. In conclusion, the lessons learned from my encounter with the sheriff extend far beyond my personal journey. They resonate deeply within the fabric of our communities. By advocating for clearer property rights education and engaging with local representatives about potential reforms, we can work together to prevent similar misunderstandings in the future. Through empathy-driven conversations aimed at fostering understanding among neighbors, while promoting transparency within law enforcement practices, we can create spaces where everyone feels secure in their ownership and valued as part of the community. Let this experience be a rallying point, a call for action rooted in knowledge sharing and collaboration among residents striving toward harmony amidst diversity, shaping who we are collectively intertwined through homeownership, deeply connected across boundaries drawn by fences, yet united through shared aspirations for understanding, compassion, driving us all forward hand in hand together toward brighter futures ahead, yet unfolding before us all. We all deserve to feel safe in our homes without fear of being misjudged or confronted based on misconceptions about our intentions or identities as property owners. Let's stand together in advocating for these changes, ensuring clearer communication surrounding property rights, while building stronger connections throughout our neighborhoods grounded firmly upon respect nurtured through love, connection woven throughout fabric community, built upon understanding, compassion driving us forward. Together, we can make a difference, one conversation at a time, and ensure that every resident has the opportunity to thrive within their own space without fear or misunderstanding clouding judgment, moving forward into brighter tomorrows ahead.